both these classes, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, they were slaveholders. They were holding slaves, and also some of those slaves were Muslims of African descent. So understand this, the argument about whether a Muslim can be an enfranchised American citizen wasn't focused on the Muslims that they were in contact with every day on their plantation. It was by reference to the image of Islam that they were receiving and that was projected to them, coming to them from overseas. You actually have Muslim pirates. Many Americans were suffering loss because of marauding Muslim sailors, pirates that were intercepting products coming across the water. There was war between Muslims in certain parts of the world and America even at that time, and then also the example of the Ottoman Empire, the sultans at that time was not a good example, and so they were using the bad example and the bad experience that they were having with Muslims at that time to say this is why Muslims should not be allowed to be a part of the government. But now this was the argument that was going on, a debate that was going on up to, this is from like the 1600s, early 17th century, up to a particular date in 1788. Particularly July 30th, 1788. And it was over one particular article of the Constitution, Article 6, Section 3. And the debate changed at that time, and it changed to one where they were no longer looking at Muslims just as a group, or Muslims as it relates to these three groups that I just mentioned. You know, you had either pirates, or you had the sultans, or you had the Muslims or the Mohammedans, as they would say at that time, that they were at war with. The debate began to center on, well, there are individual Muslims. You can't broad stroke all Muslims with one brush and say that all Muslims are like pirates, or all Muslims are like the Sultan, or all Muslims are like those that we are at war with. And so this view comes from persons like John Quincy Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Jefferson himself being a student of John Locke. And I'm looking for the quotes that help better make that point. But let's just understand this, that the argument shifted from dealing with Muslims as just one monolithic class, and started looking at and treating Muslims as individual citizens to be considered to have their own individual political rights in this country. Yes. So as we've said, the argument about the religious test as to who could be an office holder in this country, it had to do with they wanted it to be Protestants only. So the argument was about whether it be Protestant only. No Catholics, no Jews, no Muslims. The Muslim come into that discussion by way of being the pejorative example to say, not even a Muslim, not even Muslims, or even Muslims can, or if we do, then even Muslims will be able to enjoy this franchise. Then the discussion when in 1788, when people like Thomas Jefferson come into the question. Thomas Jefferson, let me show you what the author says. Thomas Jefferson, she describes, says, Thomas Jefferson was undeniably the founder best versed in Islamic religion and history. His library, early writing, and legislation clearly affirmed this. He owned Sale's, that's the name of the author, Sale's translation of the Quran, which no doubt was the Quran that Keith Ellison used to take his oath on. He owned Sale's translation of the Quran, along with numerous works on Ottomans and Barbary pirates. That's what these pirates were called. There is also evidence that he attempted to teach himself Arabic. But he also explored what most of his contemporaries apparently ignored. This is the critical thing. He explored what most of his contemporaries ignored: theories of religious toleration in which Muslims were featured. Thomas Jefferson actually was a student of this question. He was a student of religion. He was a student of politics, of government, of human nature, and the like. And he, as one of the framers of the Constitution and one of the founding fathers of this project called America, was fully enlightened to the fact that, hey, if you're really going to be beyond religious tolerance, and you're really going to become a nation for all human beings, if you're really going to be someone who says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, if you're really going to be that, then you're going to have to include Muslims and not leave Muslims out because of any kind of religious ideal that you have or some religious prejudice that you have. And even though, yes, Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, they still had this blind spot. We know, we recognize that the humanity of Africans, Muslim and otherwise, was not yet recognized with him, but the ideal was certainly true. And let me tell you how Imam Muhammad helps us to understand that failing on the part of a human being. He says God gave them an idea that was bigger than themselves. God gave them, they weren't as big as the idea that they were being given. Thank Allah, we are living in this country right now, and this country is as it is right now because of that thinking that they were blessed with and that has survived now 225 or more years, and that we Muslims are here having Jummah in America right now and throughout this country with freedom, without oppression, without any threats, because of the fact that America holds sacred religious freedom. America holds sacred the equality of all human beings and the freedom of all human beings to practice the way of life that accords with their own conscience. And so that particular aspect of this country is what Thomas Jefferson brought to the table, which makes, again, Keith Ellison's taking the oath on the Quran belonging to Jefferson, it makes it more poignant because this is what is not well understood by Americans, both Muslim and non-Muslim. America is a place where Al-Islam is welcomed. Al-Islam is, and those people that make Muslims feel unwelcome in America are not Americans. They are un-American, right? And Muslims, we make a mistake when we America, you know that one, right? America, America, KKK. Hey, let that go. Let that go. Because that's not America. The KKK is not America. And the wrong people in the government are not America. And the government is not America. You have to understand that. There's a fundamental foundation to this place, this thing that we call America, that is abstract, that is conceptual, that is ideal, that is a matter of principle, and it is that principle, that's the strength of this nation. The strength of this nation are the principles that it rests upon, and a part of that strength can also be seen in the fact that it is not contradictory of Islam. And now we know why it's not contradictory of Islam. Because the founding fathers studied Islam while they were putting it together. Now some of you know Imam Muhammad told us this 30 years ago. He told us this 30 years ago.